did you come from? Look, I don't know if you're friend or foe, but at this point I'm so fucking tired. I don't really care. God, how long have I been out here? I don't remember much after leaving the farm. Has it been days? Hard to say. All I've done is walk and think about what happened. The whole scene just keeps playing in my head over and over again. It's all I can see and hear. But now I feel like my mind is starting to clear. Like waking up from a bad dream and not really knowing where I am. Are you a priest? What are the odds, eh? It's not every day you find a priest in the middle of the forest at night, especially during a war. And I can't help but think we were meant to find each other. And now I feel this terrible ache in my arm, like it's about to fall off. There's so much blood. Looks like it was bleeding for a while. When did this happen? It had to be back at the farm. But, Padre, what are you doing here alone at night? You must know how dangerous it is. The Germans are getting desperate, and you don't want to end up in the middle of a firefight. Not that you look scared at all, which is odd. Oh, I'm sorry. Just because we're in a war doesn't mean I can forget my manners. I'm Lieutenant Nathan Cooper, 48th Highlanders of the 1st Canadian Infantry. Are you a Catholic priest? I was born and raised Catholic, actually, back in Toronto. Even did a year at seminary, but I dropped out and I've been here 2 years. It feels like 10. I know we're just on the other side of the ocean, but Holland might as well be a million miles from home. Since we're here, would you mind listening to my confession? Hell, I can barely stand, but I just feel like I should tell you what happened. It's just that there's some things I gotta get off my chest before I cash in my chips, and now is as good a time as any. Thank you. Well, we've been here for a few days now, working our way through Apeldoorn, cleaning out the Germans as we went. It was taking a while, though, because we had to go house to flush them out. The job was tiring, but all in all, things were going pretty good, and the local girls seemed to be thankful enough. Me and a few buddies were sent to check out a small farm on the edge of town. We figured it'd be an easy job just to check out real quick and get back to the rest of the boys before nightfall. We divided up when we got there, and 2 men took the barn, another 2 grabbed the stables, and I was left to check out the farmhouse alone. It looked old and abandoned, with a sunken roof and rotting walls, so piece of cake, right? I walked up to the porch and lit a cigarette. I wish I had one now, 'cause my hands are starting to shake. I don't suppose you have one? No? It's alright. So, I took a long drag on the cigarette and grabbed my rifle with one hand and opened the door into the kitchen with the other. And as soon as I did, this kid, maybe 16 or so, but taller than me, charged from the far wall. All I could see was his German helmet and a knife coming my way fast. I only had a few seconds to grab my rifle with both hands and point it at him. As soon as I did, he ran full force right into the tip of my bayonet. It pierced him through the chest, and out on the other side. I remember the cigarette falling to the floor in slow motion. And as it did, our eyes met as we stood there a few feet apart, but joined in this dreadful way. We stared at each other, motionless for the eternity that lives within a single moment, and his eyes were branded into my memory, a perfect mixture of green and blue. He was so young, Padre, and so scared. I began to feel the weight of his body on the end of my rifle, and then I felt the blade slowly pull out of him, and we both stumbled backwards. It took us a second to realize everything that had happened. He looked down at the small red circle now on his chest, and I looked at him, looking down. The helmet, which was too big to begin with, fell forward to the floor with a thud and revealed a mess of blonde hair underneath, and I could see now that he wasn't wearing a German uniform at all, but an old pair of trousers and a holey shirt. He was covered in grime from head to toe. Not a German, just a young Dutch kid, alone and afraid, with a hole in his chest. Despite what he had just been through, it didn't take long for him to lift his head and lunge at me with that knife again. I was stunned. It was like I hadn't just skewered him a few seconds before. That must have been when he stabbed me in this arm. I didn't feel it, of course. I managed to push him down with the stock of my rifle, and that's when he finally hit the floor and dropped the knife. I let the rifle fall to my waist and tried to absorb what had happened. When I realized he wasn't getting up, I fell to the floor in front of him, my heart still racing. In my head, I knew the danger was over, but my body was ready for another fight. So I just stared at him from the floor. He was laying on his side with one hand covering the wound in his chest, which had grown a little bigger. His face was white and clammy, but at least he was still breathing. Barely. I opened my mouth to call for help, but nothing came out. I thought, oh God, what have I done? How do I fix this? He's gonna die because of me, and I'm sitting here like a fucking idiot watching him go. What do you do in a moment like that, Padre? What can you do? Pray? I did pray. I prayed for God to save that boy's life more than I'd ever prayed to save my own. He didn't deserve any of this. He didn't choose to be in this war, to have his home invaded by soldiers, and now he was dying, killed by someone who came here to save him. That boy needed a miracle, and I didn't have enough faith to get him one. Another one of my sins. I watched him as he struggled for breath and began to feel a tightening in my own chest. My eyes started to go in and out of focus, and my hands started to shake just like they are now. I wanted so much to take the pain from him that if stabbing my own chest would have helped, I would have gladly done it. Seeing him suffer and knowing that I was the cause of it was too much to bear. Some bright red blood began to trickle from his mouth. I thought that was going to be the end, but he held on, the poor kid, with each breath getting shallower. I could see the beads of sweat forming on his pale face as he stared into nothing. I don't think he even realized I was there anymore. I felt completely powerless. Couldn't even give him a cigarette like we do for fellow soldiers. Not that I even knew if he smoked. And he couldn't tell me if he wanted anything because he couldn't fucking breathe. I'd taken that away from him. So I just sat there waiting for the end, praying for it to finally be over. When it did come, it was silent. He took one last breath in, and that was it. His body went limp, but his eyes stayed half open, staring right through me. This wasn't like killing some anonymous soldier. I'd gunned down plenty of them and didn't feel bad at all. But this was the first close-quarter kill I'd ever had, and it was a civilian. I fucked up. What do I do now? It took a while, but I struggled to my feet. Instantly felt lightheaded and threw out my morning rations. And I grabbed the last cigarette from my front pocket, lit it, walked out the door, and must have left my rifle behind. I couldn't even tell you what happened to my mates on the farm. I kept walking, and I didn't look back. When I got to the tree line, I started running. When I couldn't run anymore, I continued on walking until I finally passed out. I needed to get as far away from that place as I could, and as far away from me. I don't really remember too much after that, until I met you, Padre, and here we are now. You know, they say the war will be over soon, and we'll be able to go home within the next few months. But not me. The rest of the boys can go home, and they sure as hell deserve it. And you can go back to wherever you're from, but when you do, I'll be left here, alone. I'll be the farthest man from home. You see this key I have around my neck? My mom gave it to me before I left. It's the key to her home. I wear it next to my cross because those are the two things that are most important to me. But I've betrayed them both, haven't I? Mom begged me not to go to war. I was her youngest son and she wanted me to finish seminary instead. I promised I'd come back alive, and that's when she gave me this key. She's a nurse and spent most of her life at the hospital and wanted to make sure I could come back home at any time. But that's not gonna happen now. I should have listened to her and continued my religious studies, but I wanted to be a soldier instead. Even dreamed of becoming a hero. If it was only that, I think I could be forgiven. But I just killed an innocent boy, Padre. I don't expect absolution. And I don't even deserve to wear this cross anymore, so please, take it. But I'll be keeping this knife. I took it from that boy and I didn't even notice till now, but it still has my blood on it. No use in cleaning it though, because if I stick this into my neck, right here, like I plan to, it'll get even more drenched. Have you ever seen someone stabbed in the neck, Padre? If you get the angle just right, the blood spurts over 8 feet. I've seen it before, it was unbelievable, even if it's over pretty quick. So much blood, though. Then, no more wandering this strange land. No more fighting this fucking war, or killing anyone. It'll be over, and God will do with me what He will. Thank you for hearing my story, and thanks for being with me here at the end. But it's time to go. I'm not afraid. Wait, no. Stay where you are. You can't rob me of this. What are you doing? Stop.